My name is Seth. You may know me from your class. I'm here today to talk to you about the Taino people. These were people in the Greater Antilles. That is Cuba, the Bahamas, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Puerto Rico. Those are what make up the Caribbean islands, and that's where the Taino people are located. We're able to know where these people were located due to multiple archaeological finds to support this fact. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. When talking about the language of the Taino people, it is important to note that this was not a written language. Much of the knowledge we have comes from the Spanish translations from the 1500s. We don't know for sure that these are the words they used or how they're spelled, as there are multiple spellings for most of the words used by the Tainos. As you can see, some of these words are pretty similar to words used today in English and Spanish, such as barbacoa for barbecue or hamaca for hammock. As you can see, much of the language used by the Tainos is actually similar to what we find in the world today. I found that pretty interesting. Multiple archaeological finds also let us in on a little bit of the Taino lifestyle. From these finds, we're able to see areas of ceremony, places of sacred history, things like that. We're also able to see a class system in this civilization pre-Columbus. Now, what that means is that researchers and archaeologists have found areas of lower class residential income and areas of higher residential income. Now, what that income might have been back then or how they got to that higher status, we may never know. Multiple archaeological finds also support evidence of some of the religious beliefs of these Taino people. Earlier beliefs and reports from the 1500s, such as reports from friars that were there from Spanish colonization, say that the Tainos were a polytheistic people, meaning they worship many gods. Research now has found the friars' reports to be untrue. They now think that the Tainos were more of a henocentric community, which means they worship one god mainly while acknowledging others. The Tainos also relied heavily on astrology and felt a strong connection to the constellation Orion. Here we see a picture of the constellation Orion, or as many South American cultures know it, the one-legged man. Orion was important to the Tainos because it could tell the winter and summer solstices, also implicate the dry and wet seasons, which are important for tropical farming and fishing. Unfortunately, the Taino people are now extinct, as it is estimated in the 1500s around 85% of their population was exterminated throughout the Caribbean islands. So what about today's view on the Taino? Do many people know about the ancient ancestors and once metaphorical kings of the Caribbean? To find out, I sat down with Maria Gelpi. Maria, how are ya?
I'm good, Seth. How are you?
Good. Glad you could be here. So you grew up and went to school in Puerto Rico.
Yes, I did.
Very nice. So what, if anything, did they teach you about the Tainos in school?
Well, Seth, most of the education I received regarding the Taino tribes was in elementary school, and I don't remember talking about the subject in high school whatsoever. However, the perspective they taught us was the Spaniards' perspective. We never actually got to talk about how the real encounters actually went down. We only get the friars' perspectives, the colonizers' perspective, of course. But besides elementary school and high school, we really didn't talk much about the Taino tribes. No.
So, what, if anything, outside of school, have you had any exposure to the Taino tribe culture?
Yes, actually, my grandmother, she's really passionate about Puerto Rican history. And when I was younger, she would take me and my cousins to the archaeological reservations in the south of the island, where they still have some of the ritual and ceremony sites, and they have replicas of the bohíos, or like huts that the Tainos used to live in.
And what do those sites look like?
They're mostly, I'd say, like a dried up soccer field. Mostly, that's where the bates, that's where they'd play their typical. It was sort of a soccer game actually, but it's dusty, and then if you it would look like a big plane like this, and then they'd put rocks along the sides just to mark the area. I guess.
That is really cool. It's good to have people like your grandma that care about history. Other than your grandmother, about how much information about the Tainos would you say the general population of Puerto Rico has?
Sadly, not as much as one would hope or expect. I can say that the youth population is now gaining more awareness and are actually like more interested in trying to recover that loss of identity. But I could say that generations such as my parents or my grandparents, they really didn't seek, I don't know, like didn't look much into that part of their cultural identity.
So amazing what the youth can do.
Yes.
So what do you think we could do to maybe help some of the residents of these Caribbean islands really learn about the people that lived there before them?
I feel like definitely it should be expanded in the curriculum towards high school, and perhaps colleges can offer courses about the Taino and other indigenous tribes from the Caribbean.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your answers, and they were very well put. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
So, what have we learned here? We have learned that studies have found evidence that support the Taino were a people that lived in the Caribbean islands, that is, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. We also know that they had religion, whether it was polytheistic or henotheistic. We know that they worshiped something. Archaeologists also support evidence of a class structure pre-Columbus. That's pretty impressive. Another thing that they support is the language. We may not know whether the language and the spelling is totally correct, but what we do know is that the Spanish documented their words very well. So, to sum it all up, I hope that you've enjoyed my video and learned something about the Taino tribe and their people, their history, and how maybe we could help the world know a little bit more.